and welcome to Ask the Manager. We have an awful lot to talk about today. We, of course, don't have any guests because we're once again socially distanced to the point where I'm in my house, and it looks like Kevin's in his office. So I just want to touch base quickly about the election in the police station. Article passed and the community preservation passed, and of course we know we have a new president-elect and so on. But I just have to congratulate and thank the town clerk's office staff and Sandy Wright's leadership for doing all the good work that they did and working so hard and doing everything to represent Shrewsbury so well. And all I can say is what a team. Do you have any comments on that, Kev?
Oh, no, just the same as yours, being in the building almost every day that they were, because they were certainly here more than I was. Just have to thank them for all their work. Not only the town clerk staff proper, but in every election, as you know, Donna, it takes a lot of volunteers to, whether it's poll workers or other individuals behind the scenes preparing things. And that was much more, there was much higher level of volunteer participation this year. Almost every day of the week, I saw the Board of Selectmen's room had 3 people or 4 people socially distant, just sorting, putting the incoming mail-in ballots into the proper precinct box that could then be opened on election day and run through the machine. So we had, over 10,000 of those, and certainly takes a lot to manage those on a daily basis when they're coming in really en masse over about 14 days. So it was quite an effort, and we really have to thank everyone for managing our democratic processes as they did.
And I can say that I went into the election knowing and having full confidence that Shrewsbury would do an upright job, and certainly that came through. So the police station passed. Now, what are the next steps?
So the next steps, we still have a lot of design work to do on the project itself. The funding that we had to date was for a feasibility study, and it brought us, on a 100% scale, we're probably 10 to 15% designed. And so we have a lot of design work to do. We have to finalize new contracts with the owner's project manager and the architect to get us through the rest of the project, because we can only commit to the segment of the project that we actually have funding for. And actually yesterday afternoon, we started the borrowing aspect of the project, consultation with our financial advisor and laying out a schedule for a new bond rating and getting the funds in place during the month of January 2021. So that will take us the bulk of the next 45 days and getting through those processes and getting the funding in place to then enable the rest of the project. But then right around the corner is it hopefully we'll see, groundbreaking and site work could begin, next May or June. So we've got a lot of work to do to get there.
And I just have one question. The front of the building, I love that it has brick and it continues the colonial character of the campus. But there weren't any shutters, and I know there was some sharp criticism by someone through the newspaper about the front of the building not looking the way he had expectations. And I think or at least my interpretation was, it didn't look colonial enough because of the window structure in the front with those big stripes down the middle. And I wondered, is that cast in stone, or can changes be made to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of changes. Those are just conceptual renderings to really show the mass of the building so people could understand what it may look like. So again, we're only about 10 or 15% into the design process, and there'll be opportunities to make changes and get more feedback as we go. Of course, all the building committee meetings are open to the public, and they will hold particular public hearings throughout the design to get public's feedback. Yeah, and we'll certainly make any changes. But again, just conceptual drawings. We only had a limited budget and can only ask the architect to change so many things while meeting the core things that we really need to do and get a proper price estimate for the project. That was our goal to this point.
And from my perspective, the town hall has such a beautiful colonial presentation that it would be nice to be sure that the whole campus followed through with the consistency of it. And I'm no designer, and I couldn't begin to tell you. I'm sure people have better ideas than me. But
yeah, the only thing that we'll be challenged by with the police station, because of public safety, is the windows are actually set up higher, and they're not, looking at, my windows here, they're not 40 inches off the ground. They'll probably be more like 50. So finding the right approach to make it aesthetically pleasing, we'll be challenged by that, but we'll be able to do it. We definitely will work on that.
And we're getting crosswalks on Maple Ave. That's wonderful.
Those two crosswalks that were installed were actually part of the Shared Streets program that was a COVID-19 offering that enabled communities to provide better pedestrian access because of enhanced pedestrian activities. So yeah, we're happy to get those funds and improve public safety along this main corridor.
And while we're thinking of Maple Ave, the Garden Club has done an incredible job with the way they fixed all of the medians with flowers and decorations. I get distracted driving through because it just looks so pretty. So hats off to the Garden Club also. Field construction, big building. Yep. Now that you see it with the, main structure up, it's huge.
Yes. Yeah, we're getting pretty close to, between 60 and 70% completion on the construction work, and the project's going, as they say, on budget and, on schedule. So very pleased with everything that's going on there. We did some clearing along the edge of Lake Street and moving utility poles to enable the installation of the sidewalk between Hialeah and the main campus there of the new school. That work won't actually happen until the spring, but the building's weather tight and contractors are focused on everything that they can do while the weather still allows them to do to the exterior of the building, and a lot of work to do on the inside still, but we'll be ready by the turnover date and early summer.
So students will be in that building if we're not isolated. They'll be in the building in the fall. Next fall.
Yep, definitely.
That's pretty good for such a big building, because there must be an awful lot, on the inside, all that finish work and so forth. Now, Flushing all over town. I want them to get away from my neighborhood. It's amazing. I mean, it's all good, but I thought you might want to touch upon that, because there's been an awful lot of aggressive work being done.
Yeah, thank you. We've been very aggressive, as we said we were going to be, after the summer months, and continuing our unidirectional hydrant flushing program in order to get all the manganese that has built up on the inside of the water mains over the years out of the system. And it's going to be something that you see us do, not with this much intensity, because we should be able to get through the town a lot quicker in future years, but you will see us do it every year. We need to have better maintenance of that system than we did in the past. So it's actually taken us a lot longer than we even expected, because was so much built up in the system that we're running it. We're not compromising quality over quantity. We're staying on a hydrant until it runs clear, and ensuring that all the particulate matter is out of it, and that before we move on. So we've actually used a lot of water flushing the hydrants, which is okay. We're still fine on our levels, but it's quite dirty in some areas, which we knew, and kind of everyone knew, because we were having the impacts all the time. And hopefully this takes care of it. And we're very confident that it will. There's no new manganese being introduced into the system, and we're getting it all out. So we'll have a much higher quality aesthetic water in the future.
Is there any thought or consideration as to what days they'll flush next week, given the fact that it's Thanksgiving and people might be cooking?
We'll be very cognizant of that. I don't know the schedule off the top of my head, whether we're going to flush on Monday and Tuesday or not, but that would be the extent of it.
Okay. Now we have to get into the big stuff. COVID-19. We have been on a rocket ship high rise in numbers in Shrewsbury, not let alone across the state. Do you want to talk to us about where we are today, where we are with the numbers?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Donna. I have some slides that I've been using to try to ground everyone in. So I'm going to share my screen and folks will be familiar with them. They may not be familiar with the numbers, but they'll be familiar with the cadence of the presentation. Because it's what I've been using at the Board of Selectmen and what I did at SMC on my own a couple weeks ago. So just let me get it on the screen here. I'll walk through the update, and Donna, please interrupt me if you want to add some commentary or ask questions. But first and foremost, the numbers are very concerning. This, as I'll show in a couple minutes here, I kind of want everyone to feel or try to remember what they felt like in the spring when we were locked down and everyone, I think, felt more concerned about the virus than they do now. And I don't want anyone to be unnecessarily scared, but our numbers are worse now than they were in the spring. So let me walk through them right now. So March 19th, again, was our first documented case of a Shrewsbury resident. And we're now November 19th, and we continue to see some concerning signs. 659 positive cases in the community now. I'll remind everyone that we entered October less than 500 cases, and we, as Donna said, are on a rocket upwards with higher levels of both positivity. That is the rate of people who are being tested is going up, or the rate of people who are positive when they're tested is going up, and our overall numbers are going up. Using the most recent state weekly published data from November 12th, which is a week ago, we're in the yellow status after their revised color code. And we're at 12.1 daily incidents per 100,000. At that time, 1.95% positivity. Later this evening, since it is Thursday afternoon on the 19th, the state will release more numbers, and these, I imagine, I don't know percent positivity, but I imagine that it will go up, but the daily incidents per 100,000 definitely will. And we are providing reports to the public every weekday, and we present Saturday and Sunday's numbers on Monday, and we try to note that as much as possible. So what do the cases look like on a monthly basis? Here's a month-by-month total, including through November 19th as of today. And unfortunately, 19 days into November already is our month with the highest total positive cases of 151. We exceeded the 30 days of April by 4 already, with 11 days to go in the month. And
now what we need to think about when you show us April and you show us November is that we haven't even started, as far as people shopping for Thanksgiving, shopping for Christmas, the times people are going to spend together. And if we think back to April, we were certainly, as a town and as a community, much more isolated than we are now. If you go to the grocery store, you realize that the traffic has gone back to what I would think of to be expected at this time of year. And in the grocery stores, there are so many people. So we need to look at this number and be not necessarily afraid, but we need to react and be smart about where we go moving forward, because we're just hitting November and we haven't even gotten into the holidays, let alone the rest of the winter.
Right. Yeah, and we really, in the totality of our indoor activities from a winter standpoint, we've just closed the door, so to speak. So it's not even like this is building because we've all been inside for months. We're not close to that. We're not February nearing longer days of sunlight in spring. We're just getting into winter itself and indoor activities. So very concerning numbers. 18 cases today on November 19th, the highest single daily total that we've had in the whole pandemic. And unfortunately, that eclipses 16, which was only about a week ago. So we keep seeing, this exponential climb upwards. It's quite concerning. So, and here's how the numbers play out in sequence, which again, the most recent 14 days is a greater number than the most recent 30 days, and the most recent 30 days is more than double the previous 60 days. So again, very concerning that we're continuing to get more and more positive cases. We're not seeing any leveling whenever we get closer to present day, on our look back. So since September 20th, 41% of all of our cases have occurred. So we're basically 75 in the last 75 days, all 50% of the cases have occurred. So much worse than the spring. And we'll talk a little bit about that more and illustrate it throughout.
And to just humanize this, in the previous 14 days, 136 people have been affected, which means their families and all of their contacts. And who's doing all that tracing?
And it's all being done, the vast majority of it is being done by public health nurses that we are part of the Central Mass Regional Public Health Alliance, which the town is a part of, which is led by the city of Worcester. And then we are using Partners in Health, the contact tracing collaborative contract at the state level to supplement it. Because you're right, Donna, if you take that 136, there's probably 500 people that we've needed to contact. Even if every person only has 3 or 4 close contacts, we got to go to the close contacts and say, you should be tested because you're considered a close contact. And as these numbers just get higher and higher, not only are the hospitals and public health infrastructure getting more and more taxed, but we have a harder time getting to those close contacts in a timely manner to help slow the spread. So looking at the age data, and again, this is only through November 13th because we can only process the data so frequently because we're limited on our epidemiological resources to be able to look at the system. But the picture is clear. This is not a disease that doesn't impact younger folks. Our approach in the spring seemed to lessen the impact on younger folks. I think the good news on this chart is that it's not having it's having a lesser impact on those over the age of 60, which are our most vulnerable. But I think you're seeing a lifestyle approach and impact on this with more younger folks out and being active, more middle-aged folks being with those younger folks, being their own children. That's where we're seeing the positive cases. The 2 categories with 45 cases or more over this, since the beginning of September, is driving the less than 19 and the 30 to 39-year-olds. In my mind, that's the kids and the parents, are the bulk of these impacts. So just ask folks to be cognizant about that. And like you said, Donna, this isn't anything but trying to share the data with folks. We're all reliant on the approach that we're taking this fall on personal action. And it's really important to share this information with everyone as frequently as we can. And I just appreciate the opportunity to do that again today.
Now with schools, how are schools being impacted? Looking at these
So,
numbers.
so we're not seeing any data that shows that there's a spread within the schools. Obviously this chart here shows that there are school-aged children that are getting COVID-19. Yes, that is absolutely happening, but it's not like, we're seeing ones and twos, 3, 4 over the course of a week at a particular school. So we have a number of schools, everyone knows that. Um, but we're not seeing like 5 students from one classroom.
So it's not being spread within the school.
Not, the data does not indicate that. No, not at all. We're not having a problem with, having too many staff members out at this point. We're not having a problem again where we, have to have a whole cohort or a classroom go out because of close contact, or, a number of positives in any small setting. Again, it's one in a classroom, one in another classroom, more reflective of the overall community that is just widespread throughout. We can't really pinpoint particular activities where it's spreading. We just know it's getting more and more pervasive, and more than likely individuals' social activities outside of a school or institutional setting, or even a restaurant setting, where this is spreading.
So what this is telling me is that what the schools are doing so far, they must be doing it right. And that the masks must be working to some degree, or it would have spread. An example I can give you close to home is my granddaughter is a junior in high school in Connecticut. In her Spanish class, one of the students tested positive, and no one else in that class became positive. And they were all quarantined for 2 weeks. So if you do things right, you really can stop the spread. I mean, so the other students, hopefully won't be affected, and this won't get any worse within the schools. But what would be the trigger point with consideration would have to be addressed around closing the schools for a period of time?
Well, it's certainly not my area of expertise, but I have a daily conversation with Dr. Sawyer about this. And I think, to put it simply, is that the data would have to show that there's a reason to close the schools. So we
Right.
would have to see, several classrooms having clear spread within the classroom. But I think you're right. And I'll talk about it in a couple slides ahead. And I'm borrowing liberally from, an expert on the matter when I make these comments. But, there's ways that we can mitigate and reduce the spread even in a more open environment than we had in the spring.
So now, is it true that there's more family spread or household spread?
We are seeing that, yes, on a address by address basis. So I think we've talked about this before. Data comes in, we get both, we're shared from the state's epidemiological system the number of cases. And then for public safety purposes, a very limited set of personnel receive the address information so that we can inform first responders of positive cases should we have to respond to an address. So that's where it stays within the public safety realm. Literally 5 people probably see the addresses. There is indication within those addresses of 3 or 4 cases within a single family home. But even still, I would say that if you look at the overall data set, it's still more widespread than that. So it's not like when we see a case at a single address that we know that we're going to see 3 or 4. But on occasion, we see 3 or 4 positive cases within any given address. So,
and with
it's interesting.
all that's happening, are we seeing fire, police, EMTs, are they being affected? Are we seeing them catching the COVID, or have their precautions been good enough?
They've largely done a good job. We've had a couple interactions with people that we are providing services to who were positive, that we had to quarantine some staff members. We have had a few staff members across the town environment, including public safety, that have become positive. We don't have any direct indication that those positive cases were a result of their working for the town or their interactions with the public while working with the town. But we've dealt with our, I think, fair share of positive cases in a couple precautionary quarantines because of interaction with positive people that we've serviced in public safety.
Okay.
So now this is a big chart that we really haven't shared yet. And the first thing that provide an overview of it. So this is our daily COVID cases with a trend line through it since March 19th. And it reflects November 19th's data, which is the 18 on the right. And you'll note that I said 18 was our highest ever. The 37 cases that you see in early, or actually mid-April, we talked about that at the time. That was a catch-up. That's when the state released some additional data out of their MAVEN system, which is the epidemiological system that they track these things through. So those 37 cases actually occurred prior to, 27 of those 37 cases actually occurred prior to, I believe the date's April 22nd. So that's not a real total. That's a catch-up of a backlog. But I think the main thing to look at on this chart is the trend line. And that trend line, you'll see what was the surge that occurred, the peak in really the middle of April into early May, and for Shrewsbury. But if you look out to the right where we are in present day, I mean, we're climbing much steeper and we're already much higher on the trend line than we ever were. We're nearly double where we were on the trend line back in April right now. And again, it's a greater duration. Those blue lines on the right hand of the screen are much taller and much more consistent over especially the last 2 to 2.5 weeks than they were at any point in April. And they're probably more consistent because we are better at tracking the data and we are better at processing the data. So the data itself is a little smoother than it was. But the trend line shows that the fall surge is making the spring surge look rather easy. So it's definitely quite concerning. And we'll share this information as much as we can as we hopefully, again, we have to flatten the curve as we talked about in the spring and do everything that we can. And I'd like to talk about that for a few minutes. Earlier today, I was able to participate in a session with Juliette Kayyem, who is a national security expert. She's a frequent guest on the Jim and Marjorie show on NPR, WGBH. She was talking to a group of town managers about approach to the pandemic and what we should be thinking about. Just very helpful. And she gave us authorization to kind of share her thoughts. And I think they're very simple, but very impactful. And she says we should all be thinking about the 3 M's. The first is minimize contact intensity, manage our number of contacts, and maximize our mitigation policies. And Donna, you touched on this earlier in our conversation. So minimize contact intensity. An example I can provide of that is, picking up takeout versus sitting in a restaurant for an hour and having dinner. So your intensity with other humans and human respiration is much lower. Another example would be the library. We're offering pickup, at the library. Technically, this says we could allow limited browsing, although we're not doing that right now. But how you interact with your contacts and what duration is very important, because we all know that Well, let me just share that, when we look at what a close contact is, it's someone that you were in contact with less than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes in a 24-hour period. That's the definition of a close contact. So everything outside of that or less than that, you are protecting yourself by minimizing that intensity of a contact that you have with any other individual. Manage the number of contacts. Living in small cohorts, ideally just your own household. If not, a very limited set of your social friends, and being very consistent in that and not straying from it. As Thanksgiving approaches, it's just not about familiarity. Just because someone doesn't mean you can't get COVID from them. So the smaller the group is that you interact with, the less exposure that you have to the virus. And maximize mitigation policies is more of an organizational or a government level thought, but you can implement your own policies, and it's simple. It's wear a mask, right? It's wash your hands. It's, do other things like that from a personal hygiene standpoint that you're going to do all the time to protect yourself. And I think this is why there is success in the schools thus far, because they're doing all these things. They're operating in small groups. They're minimizing their contacts as far as not, minimizing their intensity, getting outside when they can. They're wearing, wearing masks, and they're not just changing classes willy-nilly. They're sticking with smaller groups than they would have in a normal school year. So I think these 3 M's are really important for everyone to think about, not only as we roll into the holidays, but just in our life for the foreseeable future. But I also do want to talk about some good things that I think we know now that we didn't know in the spring. We are certainly in the storm before the calm, right? We're in that fall surge that we were afraid was going to happen. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccine progression is a real thing, and we've had a lot of good news on that in the last few weeks. And that's something that was clearly uncertain in the spring. We know the runway to the vaccine for the common population is still very long, but at least we know that sometime around the late summer to fall of 2021, that things will be a lot better than they are right now. And that's certainly a long way away. I get it. It's not January, it's not March. It's probably August or September or October of next year from what we know now. And hopefully we shorten that timeline. But there is, light at the end of the tunnel where there may not have been in the past. And I also just wanted to say, we as a town are already planning for the distribution of the vaccine. We ran a mock distribution session a couple weekends ago at Oak Middle School. Our plan in our local distribution of the vaccine, when we have access to it and when we're allowed to do it, will be through at public buildings, more than likely our larger school campuses. This is something that we're familiar with from H1N1, but will be different. One of the main things that's going to be different that I think we know that we should talk about now is that how the vaccine is going to be rolled out at a national level. It's not going to be a population-based rollout. It's going to be a prioritization and a characteristic-based rollout where, the health system workers are going to get it first, and anyone related to them, along with those at higher risk, at least from what I've heard to date. And then the further you go away from it, the less clear it is to me right now, and the questions need to be answered. Do you want to vaccinate the people that are most likely to spread it, or the people that are most likely to be impacted by it or get it? So there's still a lot of conversation that needs to happen at the national level, but I think folks should be focusing on what we know and how we can live with this, and increasing their level of caution, because there's light at the end of the tunnel and you want to get to the end of the tunnel, right? Because there's a risk that you're not going to if we keep having, we've had 151 cases in 19 days in November, and we don't want that number to double and triple as we move forward in the coming weeks to wherever the spread in the community is just unbearable and overwhelming.
We need to also learn from Canada, where they saw a spike in cases um, 2 weeks after their Thanksgiving. So they had family gatherings and obviously should have been more careful than they were, because there was a significant spike after that. So we have Thanksgiving coming up, and we have to think really long and hard about what our plans are and who's going to be together.
Hmm. Yeah, so
Not
Donna,
easy.
those were my main slides. I'm going to stop sharing the screen at this point, and um, continue the conversation. But yeah, I really think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We do know a lot more than we did know in the spring, although the moment that we're in right now, the cases are really high. We need to, again, flatten the curve, but we just think about some simple tests. And look, I know, I get it, it's hard. A lot of personal responsibility and decision goes into these. Um, and and personally, I mean, I have school age children. Um, but we really need to prioritize schools, right? We can't afford to let kids miss out on a month, a week, a month, a year, God forbid, of education, because we all know how education works. It's a lifelong process, and it builds upon itself. So um, everyone's decisions will help us keep the schools open and help us stay closer to that normal that we all think we remembered. That will definitely be different in the future, no matter how quickly we turn the corner on this.
So enough of that sad story.
Yeah.
I do want to say that I found your presentation a couple of weeks ago very helpful, and I think it's good if you can keep us updated as you have been, because it helps to remind us about what we have to do, because it's called COVID exhaustion, and it's a normal thing for us to feel COVID exhaustion, but we need to do our job, and we need to do what it takes to flatten that curve, and it takes all of us. And
Right.
as far as I'm concerned, I know I'm a little bit tougher than a lot of people on a lot of things, but I say tough luck. Do what you have to do now so that you can move on with a normal life, and that we all can get back to going to the beach and doing all the great things that we like to do with friends and acquaintances. So on that awful note, let's move on. You have all sorts of changes coming as far as business. You have Cytiva, the life science company, soon to be at, where is 800 Boston Turnpike?
It is right to the east of the car dealerships, the Audi dealership up there. So it's an existing building that they are in the process of renovating and will be using for biomanufacturing. Sativa is the legacy of GE Healthcare, and they have a strong presence in Marlboro, and we're happy that they're opening a biomanufacturing facility there right along Route 9.
And the building that I read about in the paper, it says it's an 80,000 square foot building. Is that facility, that's the one in Shrewsbury, because it's also in, is it Westboro?
Yeah, that's correct. The 80,000 square feet is the 800 Boston Turnpike facility.
And the 200 jobs are between the two?
Yeah, they're statewide. I'm not sure. I think it's just between the two facilities, but I don't know if they have other locations throughout the state. But we're just a part of the 200.
And what I found exciting is that they're building bioreactors, which is hardware used for growing organisms in controlled conditions, which makes pharmaceuticals and vaccines and so forth. So very exciting to have those jobs come to our town. Now you have Edgemere Crossing at Flint Pond, which is a mouthful to say. Hopefully they'll shorten it. That 68 acres looks enormous. They cleared that land so fast. They've already done the land. Well, they're in the process of the land clearing, but it was flat to begin with, so I'm sure it happened quickly. One day I drove down the street and all of a sudden the trees were gone and the land was cleared. And so they're moving right along.
Yeah, they really are. They were given their, site permits to start that work a couple weeks ago, and anticipate seeing building permits for the 250 apartment units residential component to come in early January for construction to get underway in that time frame. And for the commercial 140,000 square feet of commercial space, construction to start after the weather breaks in the spring, which will include the Market Basket store itself. So a lot of public work will go on both in Route 20. So that'll still be a tough construction spot that folks will want to avoid, but eventually it will be really transformed both from a pedestrian and a motor vehicle standpoint. There'll be a 10-foot wide multi-use path on the south side of Route 20, which is the Edgemere side, that will continue up the hill, and Puritan is going to be turned into a cul-de-sac, and that will limit access from Route 20, but be much safer. It's very high-speed transition up there for a residential neighborhood. And a lot of the sewer infrastructure work is completed. The pump station is nearing completion. That'll be ready to enhance sewer flow towards Worcester. We installed the new force main this summer, so but you'll still see roadway improvements to both Lake Street and Route 20 right there at the intersection, and for several hundred feet on either side of it to accommodate the project and meet with components of the master plan for the entire Route 20 corridor that the Board of Selectmen has been reviewing and working with Mass DOT and Representative Kane on.
And the exciting part about that is we all have to remember, the sooner they open, the sooner we start getting the tax revenue.
Correct. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it'll be very helpful, and hopefully an overall economic upswing, a double dip upwards.
And you have the Verizon store moving into the Midas Muffler building, and then Federal Express or FedEx or whatever it's called, FedEx store is expanding. But
yeah, a lot. Yep.
I was just going to say, I hope as the Verizon store gets bigger, they have more employees in there too, and not just a bigger building, because it's a very busy store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and then we have Geico's moved in where the Two Ovens building is. And
that's right. Yeah.
Then more shopping with Five Below. That's going into a vacant store, but I don't know what vacant store.
Yeah, I can't think of it right off the top of my head either, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of activity in the White City Lakeway Business District area. We're really fortunate to not have prolonged vacancies, which ultimately folks may not know, but when a commercial building is vacant, a lot of their taxes are based on the income approach, not just the value of the building. So if they're vacant, then our tax revenue goes down. It doesn't stay the same regardless. So it's good to continue to be able to facilitate those private owners and getting the spaces re-rented and back open and active.
And I'm not sure, the India store, is that the one in Fairlawn where they're going to put a butcher shop?
That is the one up on Route 9, closer to Home Depot.
Oh, further up. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So it'll be exciting to have a butcher shop in town, because what we all have to remember is we leave town and go to other towns and contribute to their tax revenue by going to their stores, and to have them in our own town will be good for Shrewsbury.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another bank. Of course, got to have more banks in Lakeway Commons. But now what's happening at Fairlawn? There's an awful lot of construction near Reliant, the Reliant building. What's going to go in there?
So just some general improvements are being made to the facade and roof, and freshening up and updating that building. Enhanced parking and parking improvements as well. So yeah, it's just investment in the property, which is good for the town.
So more stores, more
Yeah,
restaurants, more revenue. That's what we have to keep saying.
that's right.
Now, I noticed on cable, there was a police promotion ceremony. And it was really amazing to see. Not only was Chief Kevin Anderson sworn in, but Michael O'Connor became a lieutenant, and he is the operations division commander. And then we have Nick Perna, who became a lieutenant, who's in charge now of administrative services. And then we have Sergeant David Fosha, Sergeant Tim Finicom, and I'm going to kill this name, I know, Sergeant Mike Vitols, I'm not sure. And we've got new recruits. And we got 3 new recruits in town. So a lot happening in the police department. All of it's been planned. It's not something that's just suddenly happening. This has been long in the evolution. And then with the new recruits, that's just part of the plan. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the ceremony itself was a catch up, of many months of promotions and changes within the department. Actually, Lieutenant Perna, his promotion formally occurred way back in the spring when Lieutenant McCarthy departed for his position in the judicial system. So it was nice to see Chief Anderson plan this event and recognize the officers. We also swore in some new special police officers that are supporting the department, mainly managing roadway work and details, which we just can't keep up with because there's so much going on in town. And it's something that you're going to continue to see because we have several vacancies in the department that we weren't able to get folks into the academy as soon as we thought they were because of COVID, but we hopefully have them lined up for the midwinter and spring academies, and we'll get new officers in the spring, because with each one of those promotions into from a patrol position into a superior position, we ultimately have a hole to backfill within the patrol division. So we're not at 100% staffing at this point. Certainly we have sufficient officers to manage the town, but we'll be better to be back up to staffing, hopefully within the next 8 months or so.
There was one disappointing thing about the ceremony. They had to wear masks so we couldn't see their faces.
Yep.
And so half the time I couldn't figure out who I was looking at, even if I knew them. So
yeah, and the other disappointing thing is, the chief didn't invite people because he couldn't. He wanted to make sure that those officers' family members could be there, but we're under a 50-person gathering restriction, and we certainly take that very seriously. And so it wasn't a good community-wide celebration. Hopefully the ones in the future can be.
Right, because it was really, really nice to be able to see that on television. And you could sense the pride in the offices, and it was just another good thing for Shrewsbury. We have a great police department, and we have genuine people working there. So let's move on to veteran services. What would you like to tell us about veteran services?
Well, I tell you, unfortunately, it's getting busier.
Yeah, I know.
We're providing a lot more support to individuals. Everyone's still available, throughout this time, to provide any support and incentives that we can to our veterans. We had a wonderful reverse Veterans Day parade ceremony where the veterans got to drive by and be recognized. So yeah, we can continue to provide those services and encourage anyone who is a veteran in need, and even if you don't have a particular need, you certainly deserve any benefit that you can get. So you should touch base with our veteran service agent to see if there is any support that we can provide to you, monetary or otherwise.
Another really, really nice advancement. DPW has a notification problem. Oh my word, I'm tongue-tied. Let me start again. DPW has a notification process for repairs. And
Yep.
I've gotten positive feedback. People have used it and they're so impressed with the fact that they'll go by the next day and the repair is already taken care of. It's been addressed. So it's a really good system. And I would imagine it wasn't a lot of work to actually set it up, and it's better for the residents and it's better for the people in DPW to be able to respond to where needed.
Yeah, it's a mobile app-based system called SeeClickFix. It's a a proven innovation in local government work, and it's a customer service management tool that we use and just providing residents another option to help identify issues and actually be able to track our progress and support their neighbors' requests for services actually through this process. So you can go to anywhere you get your apps. I feel like a commercial, and search for SeeClickFix Shrewsbury and download the app, and you'll be able to communicate with us through the town's first mobile app interaction with residents that we're happy about. I guess Second Code Red does have a mobile notification to it, but this is much more interactive, two-way conversation that we can have with residents. And again, it's just a customer service tool that we're using to allow residents to help us identify problems and check the items off the list and so we can be responsive to their needs.
Now, I downplayed and made it sound really simple that they set up this program, but that's all through IT, your IT department.
Yeah, and a lot of support from the vendor. Yeah, but yeah, the integration of it into our email system and our phone system is a process, that was undertaken, not surprisingly, led by David Snowden, the business manager for DPW, and it consolidates the information coming in, and we're grateful for everyone's efforts to get that launched and successful. And you don't have to want to report a program, or a problem. You can go on there and remind yourself of the trash schedule. Is it what week is it for recycling? What is it, a lawn and leaf week? All that information is right there through the app that you can access. So I encourage residents to download it and use it and provide any feedback that you have.
I imagine with COVID and all the restrictions, it's probably more difficult, but will there be another, what do you call it, waste medication collection day?
Yeah, we did just have one about a month ago. Wasn't as well publicized as we normally did.
Never heard about it.
Yeah, so that's the problem. We will likely have another one in the spring, if not again in the fall. So we'll try to do a better job next time in getting residents an option to turn their medication in.
Selco got recognized for smart energy provider recognition through the American Public Power Association. And that's really a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's a tribute to the good work done by Selco.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our portfolio is very environmentally friendly and, very, efficient. And I know the new general manager, Chris Roy, is more than just an advocate for public power. He's, a great asset to it. And I look for, many improvements and more opportunities for sustainable energy, through his leadership with the board, and, trying to, be sustainable and manage costs at the same time, because they go hand in hand. So
we're very lucky to have our own power company in town. And the response we get from the people that when we call and need help, they just have such a good attitude as they come to us, in the public. And, we're fortunate to have that. And I don't want to jinx us, but we've had substantially less power outages than other places around us. with the weather and all that's happened over time. And when we do have a power outage, it's actually really shocking to us by comparison. Do you find that?
No, there's definitely no doubt, and I mean we certainly can't keep the trees from falling on the lines all the time, but you know the infrastructure that's been built in this town to be able to segment the system and close circuits and keep power up to as many people as we can. A lot of leadership that comes through Ralph Icarino and John Laverty and running the electric side of the house and many others. You know, so it's not only that we provide quick response when we have an outage. We try to manage the system, but it's really the planning and foresight that they have to be able to provide system efficiencies and redundancies that allows us to have power up all the time. Because those snowstorms hit us just as hard as they hit the next town over, but it's all about our pre-planning and quick response. And obviously having our own dedicated crews is a huge asset.
It certainly is. And with Michael Hill's retirement, we thought he'd probably disappear and go on vacation and do all these great things. And he's immersed himself in town activities, and it's wonderful to see. And he's an icon in our community. So it's nice to still have Michael active in the town. We have, and you've talked about this, you've mentioned it, we have a lot of volunteers in town through all various organizations and just right within Town Hall also that, I think we're pretty fortunate to have. Speaking of Town Hall, will there be any changes with this spike? Will there be any changes to the day-to-day activities in Town Hall?
I don't think so. Not at this point. We are still on about 50% staffing level on site, 50% off site. We operate by appointment only on Tuesday through Friday, Tuesday through Thursday. So and we're able to manage. We don't have a very high level of demand for those appointment time slots in most departments. Again, the town clerk's office continues to receive the most appointments, but we've upgraded our infrastructure, so to speak, with the mailboxes and drop boxes outside, and we're still working just as hard and perhaps even more efficient than we were before. I do look forward to the day that the town hall opens back up, but we're learning a lot of lessons about how we can be more effective, and we'll build from there in the future.
And if I wanted to participate in a public meeting, how would I do that?
So all of our agendas that are posted on the website have a way for you to participate in them, and you can call into them if you want to provide public comment during an aspect of a meeting where there's public comment opportunities. They're all available through SMC Live, or again, you can find the way to join through the agenda and listen in to those live proceedings as well. No changes for that in the future as well. I really see a lot of this system that we've set up that has kept staff healthy will be in place, more than likely into next summer.
And as fall and winter comes along, did you find that we got enough support from environmental police and the Worcester Police on the lake during the summer?
I say it was better this year. It's definitely moving in the right direction. And we'll work with the Lake Quinsigamond Commission.
I don't know why I lost your voice. No, but we're out of time anyhow. I'd just like to say thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.